Good evening, everyone. Tonight's topic, it's life after life. One of the most interesting lectures that proved to many people in the last 25 years that the death, it's really not the last station in the life of people. Today, we're gonna, based on our proofs, based on the Jewish world, the Torah, the written and the oral Torah, and based on the scientific world, which means parapsychologists that had researchers in the last 25 years, we're going to use the information that they discovered to prove what the Torah knew already 3,317 years ago, as it was given in Mount Sinai. Just when we start in the beginning of the Torah, we see the description of the creation of Adam. And God created Adam, descend from the ground, and he blew a soul into his nostril, and then he became a living creature. In the book of Kohelet, King Solomon writes that when a person dies, the soul leaves first the body, and the spirit goes back to the master who gave the soul, and the person is unable to talk and unable to walk, and so forth and so on. In the oral Torah, we see a description of creation of man, which there are three partners in the creation of human being, which is God, his mother, and his father. The Torah describes who gives what to the creation of man. First, God and the father and the mother. The father gives the white and the bones and the ligaments and the nails and the brain that in the head, the eye, the white inside the eye, and the mother give the color, the redness of the skin and the flesh and the actual skin, the hair, the black, the pupil of the eyes, and God gives the soul and the spirit and the image of the face, the ability to see, the ability to hear, the ability to talk and to walk, the intelligence and the wisdom. Once the time comes for the person to die, God takes his share, and what happens from this moment? The person is unable to walk and unable to talk. One of the 613 mitzvot in the Torah are: you should not communicate in any way with the deceased people. And obviously, once God, the creator of life, comes and tells us, do not communicate with the deceased people and don't ask them questions, we understand right away that it's possible, even though we don't understand how to do it sometimes, but that means it's possible. And the next thing we understand right now is that those people exist somewhere, which means there's a way to communicate with them. That means they really never died. We see the body, that the body is dead, but we have to understand right away that the actual soul is existing somewhere. In the book of Job, which is a part of the Bible, this is what he writes: the flesh and the skin is my clothing, and I'm covered with bones and ligaments. So who am I? If the Bible describes that, Job says like this: you covered me with the skin and the flesh and the bones and the ligaments, so who really am I? That means there's something spiritual that covered with this envelope. In the book of Isaiah, this is what it says: the human being that have a soul in his nostrils. As it described that when God created Adam, he blew this energy, what we are calling a soul, into the nostrils of Adam, and he was able to start walking. The Gemara describes the baby in his mother's womb in the period of 9 months of the pregnancy, and this is the way it's described in the oral Torah. What is the baby like? He is folded, and there is a spiritual candle above his head, and is able to watch from one side of the world to the other side of the world. And there's an angel that teaching him the entire Torah in those period of 9 months. And just when his time arrived to enter life, before he leaves his mother, comes the angel and hit him on his top lip and makes him forget all the Torah that he just learned. And now he comes to the world, and in a period of 60, 70, 80 years that he's going to live here, he will have to work very, very hard to learn the Torah and to remember what he learned. This is a description of a baby before he came out to this world. The student of the Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Chaim Vital, 500 years ago, all the things that we know today about Kabbalah comes from his writing. And this is what he writes. The body of the person is not the real person. It is only a body, the flesh. When the Torah wants to speak about a person, the Torah speaks about the spiritual image. When the Torah wants to speak about the body, always God call it the skin, the flesh of the person, which means it's two different things. There's a diamond and there's a box that you put the diamond in. Obviously, the box is not as important as the diamond, even though the way we live sometimes, we get an indication that we care about our body much more than our spiritual image, which is the soul. Most of the time is because of ignorance, because we are not appreciating the value of our soul. As we continue, the Kabbalah continue to describe like this. The same way that when a person buys an outfit by the tailor measures his body and he makes him a suit. The same way God made a suit to the soul, which is the actual body. The soul is the real person, and the body is the outfit that the soul was put in it. So there are some sources in the Torah describing what man is really all about. We're going now into the other side, which is the spiritual, it is the scientific world, and this is what we're going to see. Tonight, I'm going to use 5 different ways to prove scientifically that there is really life after death. The first way is clinical death, which means out-of-body experience. The second way to prove is seance, which means medium communication with the deceased people using a middleman, what we call a medium. We're going to see some of those experiments that they did. The third way to prove, it's reincarnation. Souls that are transferred from one body into another in different places, in different generations. We're going to prove that. We're going to speak about regression, which means hypnotizing people and regress them to the time before they came to the world and finding them speaking in foreign languages that they themselves do not know what they're saying when they see the video later on. So it's going to be very interesting. And then there's one more way, is living normal people like us that living here in a test with a free choice, and one day something happened that they wake up and there are 2 souls living in one body. Until today it was Reuven, and from now on is Reuven and Shimon living in one box. How do we know? Very simple. Now sometimes Reuven is speaking from his throat, and sometimes Shimon speaking from his throat. And it could be sometimes 2 different languages, 2 different voices. It's sometimes even a male and a female. That 1 hour he speaks like a man, and an hour later a woman speaks from the same throat. And we're going to see how is it possible. And if we have time, we'll explain why does it happen. Now, according to science, how we define death? What's really death? Based on what information we are able to determine if a person is alive or is dead. So first symptom is that the heart stops to work. Second symptom is the brain not functioning right. The waves that are normally turning the brain to think and to function are not exist. The third symptom is that the cells of the brain does not receive any more oxygen from the lung of the person, which means no oxygen goes into the brain. That means there's a damage as we speak. Once it happens to the person, there's a damage being created. And the next way to know if the person is dying is moments after we see the body temperature drop. And the last symptom is that after few minutes, once we're going to pinch the person, or we're going to burn him, or we will try to move him, we will see that he does not have any more feelings. The nerve system stopped to work. That means even if we burn a cigarette on his skin, he won't react. At that moment, once we have those 5 different symptoms, we can be sure that this person is completely dead. According to the scientific world, once a person has those 5 symptoms more than 6 minutes, he is considered a permanent death. And if he's going to come back to life, for whatever reason, we're going to see soon how is it possible, most likely there will be a permanent damage to the brain. That means he will lose his memory, he would lose his ability to understand things, and so forth and so on. One of the most famous parapsychologists in the world, his name is Dr. Raymond Moody. Dr. Raymond Moody is a psychiatrist from Virginia University. He interviewed 150 people who died and came back to life, and he published his conclusions in his books, Life After Life, that was translated to 30 different languages. The psychologist Carlos Ossis from the United Union of Psychology interviewed 877 doctors who described testimonies and stories of their patients who died and were able to come back to life, and he published many, many articles and books about it. I'm giving you the world's most famous names in the last 25 years that dealing every day of their life with people who died and were able to come back to life after 6 minutes, which means they were already considered as dead people, and they were able to come back to life and tell a story, and those stories were recorded and were published later on, and we're going to see the conclusion soon. Dr. Kenneth Ring is a professor, psychology professor from Connecticut University. He investigated in a period of 2 years 102 cases of people who died and came back to life, and published his book, The Life in Death. Dr. George Ritchie, the president of the Richmond Medical Academy and the head of the psychiatrist unit in Towers Hospital, he wrote a book, The Return from Tomorrow. And one of the most famous in the entire world, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross from Detroit, a world-known psychiatrist. She investigated for over 20 years, over 1,000 cases of people who died and were able to come back to life. She published a book about life and death and many other books, and she published many, many important articles about her conclusion. Dr. Maurice Rawlings, a cardiologist from Tennessee University, investigated 300 cases and published a book, Beyond the Point of Death. Dr. Frank Schoonmaker, a head cardiologist in Denver Hospital, over 1,000 cases, and he found in his researches 60% of the people who died and were able to come back to life, they were describing the same stories. More than 60% of the people had mutual stories. What we call today clinical death, which has another name, it's called out-of-body experience. We have to be aware of one thing, that over 30 million people, over 30 million people in the world reported that they died and were able to come back to life. Just in the United States alone, there's more than 8 million people who died and were able to return to life. So we are seeing that it's not just a rare incident. It happens daily all over the United States and the world. It happens every day. As we speak, there's always people who are dying and are able to come back to life. What happened to people who died and were able to wake up? Let's see some of the things that they're all saying. They have some mutual elements from the moment that they feel that their soul is exiting the body. There are few mutual elements that repeat in the story of each one of these patients. First, they all describe the soul is flying above the body. They saw their body in a hospital, in the ambulance, in the street, in the bed, no matter where they died. The first thing that happens that they see that they are flying above themselves, above the body. And they were able to see what happens in a hospital around the body in all the period of time that they were out of the body. How do we know they're right? Because when they're going to come back to life, even though they were considered dead for the last 10, 20 minutes, they are going to tell us everything that took place in a room for the last 20 minutes, and even more than that. The next element is that they describe that their soul entered a dark tunnel. On the way out of the body, they are entering a tunnel. What happened later as they're flying inside that tunnel? They're beginning to see a light. In the beginning, the light is not so strong. And later, the light will become very, very, very strong. And the way they describe the light is, it's a spiritual light with lots of love, communicated with them, but not in a regular way of speaking, through telepathy, which means through thoughts. They were able to communicate with the light and know what the light are telling them and what they are answering, but not through regular speaking. Some of them reported that after their death, they started to see some of their relatives that died before coming and welcoming them and sending them messages. And they saw them exactly in the same way they look when they were alive in this world. Then they report that they started to see their life in snaps, in fast picture, one after the other, from the moment they were born until the moment they died, all their life in a very short period of time, one picture after the other, and they described that they saw a conclusion of their entire life in sharp and clear pictures, and very fast, one after the other. All of them, with no exception, when they came back to life, they described everything that took place in a room, and better than that. For instance, people who were in the surgery room or in the emergency room, while they consider as complete dead people, later they will tell you everything that took place in the entire hospital. Even though the body was in the first ground level, the first floor, when they came back to life, they were able to tell you what happened in each room, in the entire hospital. If the hospital has 7 floors and many, many rooms, they can tell you in the last 10 minutes, in each one of the rooms, which doctor did what and said what, and which surgery is taking place in that room, what shoes are in the windows, and who just died 5 minutes ago, and which doctor just signed a death certificate in an office in a hospital. Which information like this, obviously, a person that is right here, he cannot tell you what's happening in the entire building. So that's a very interesting thing, and it's not one or two. All of them, with no exception, had no limitation. Once the soul came out of the body, the limitation that a person has while he's in a body disappeared. Here is some of the stories. I was up. I saw how they work on my body. They put the electric shock. I saw my body is jumping as they putting the electric on my chest. And this moment, I fell right back into my body. That's one person. The second person says, she says, I knew I'm dying, but there's nothing I could do. Nobody heard me. I came out of my body, I have no doubt about it. I saw my body is laying on a surgery table. I heard the doctor giving up. I felt terrible because I didn't want to die. Another person, I was out of my body. I knew clearly I could either return into the body or not. All the deceased people were describing the dark tunnel that the soul entered while they came out of the body. They felt that they're flying in a very long and dark tunnel with huge noise ringing inside the ears. One person described, I felt I'm flying in a dark valley. The darkness was so strong I could not see anything, but it was a great feeling. It was feeling of peace and quiet and relaxation, no fear. I find myself inside a cave, inside a tunnel, with mutual circles, and I was flying inside those circles. Another person, I was out of my body. I felt terrible in the beginning. Then came the light, that huge light, that in the beginning was blurry, but later it became very shiny. It was such a huge light, nothing compared to any projector in this material world. Too much light, and I felt warm. And it did not disturb my vision. I was able to see at the same time what happened in the entire hospital, the doctor, the nurses, the surgery room. Another person, huge light, shiny, covering from all angles, spiritual feelings, love that I never felt in this life, connection, spiritual connection, feel of mercy to that light. When I was there with the light, I felt so great, I did not want to return. That light had a great personality, so warm and so good. I didn't want to leave it. Others highlight the feelings that there was a line. And you knew that once you cross that line, there is no return. As long as you did not cross that line, you still have a chance to return into the body. I saw the light suddenly, and it started to become stronger, but I wasn't blinded by the light. I felt that the light is asking me if I'm ready to die. I have a feeling like I'm speaking to a person, but it wasn't a person, it was the light that's speaking to me, communicating with me. I knew that the light knows that I wasn't ready to die. I had a feeling that I'm being in a test. I felt so great in confidence and love, it's very difficult to describe. All of them described that relatives and friends came to them to show them the way. Suddenly, their attention was turning into some of the people they knew that were communicating with them without words, and they're welcoming them. Those were people that I knew in my life, and they died. I saw my grandmother. I saw a girl that I knew from school. I recognized their face. I felt they're very close to me. They all were flying around me. They came to accept me. I saw my friends in my brain, not in a spiritual body, but not in a material body, in a spiritual image. All of them testified that they saw a movie from periods of their life, like I said before, snap one after the other. And they said that their ability to remember and to pay attention to all the picture was so huge, they were able to get a lot of information without forgetting anything. And they saw key points of their life. One guy described, this is what happened to him. He said, I was very embarrassed from a lot of the things I saw about myself. They showed me over there what's not correct. I thought to myself, I wish I would have not done those things. I wish I can return back to the world and correct them. Terrible disappointment that I did nothing in my life. I did not achieve anything. I did not know anything. I did not complete one good thing in my entire life. A car was coming from around the corner and flipped over. The tank gas exploded and I lost my conscience. Then I found myself in Beersheba hospital in Israel, which I never saw it before. But today I know everything about it. I know where the X-ray rooms, all the departments. I lost feelings about time and dimensions. I saw everything at the same time, like I'm in all over the hospital at the same time. I was laying on a bed, and right away I was in the emergency room and in the X-ray room, and then I paid attention that in the 3rd floor of the building, I was looking at the tennis shoe that's standing by the window, and she described how the shoe looks. And then they go to the 3rd floor to that room, and they open up the window, and they see there's a shoe over there. But remember, she's in the 1st floor in a hospital. Dr. Elizabeth Kovler-Ross writes, people who are missing parts of their body, such as no hands, no leg, describe that when they died and they left their body, they were perfect again. They were complete. The missing leg or the missing hand were there. What is it like? I'll give you an explanation. This is what it says. You see, I have now 2 hands, right? You see the hands are moving. God forbid if a person lost his hand, so you only see one hand, and you see a shoulder, that's it. You don't really see an hand. But if you had spiritual eyes, you would really see that this person really have an hand, but it's not material. So that means that when a person used to have 2 hands and now he's holding his hands down and you chopped one of them off, the part of the soul that were inside that hand are still there, but you're not going to be able to feel it. You're going to go until tomorrow like this. You go on empty. Why? Because it's not material. But the people who died, they remember that they saw themselves complete. So that means handicaps that had no feet, no legs, they saw themselves complete standing with 2 legs. And this is the way they describe it. People who were blind from birth, remember, never saw colors in this life. They do not know what blue is, what red. A baby that is born blind, right? When he's 10 years old, you come and try to explain to him what blue is like. Are you able to tell him to describe blue? You can sit 1,000,000 years and try to explain to him what blue looks like, and you won't be able to tell him. It's something, it's a spiritual feeling, whether either you saw it or you never saw it. There's no way to describe color to someone who doesn't know what colors are. Those blind from birth people, when they died and they came back to life, they describe what happened in a hospital in colors. So the question that we have right now here, it's unbelievable. First, we see that a blind person, the limitation is only in the eyes, where supposedly that's the screen, that's the camera, but inside they really see. They see, but there's something that blocks their vision. And once they come out of the body, that block does not exist anymore. So they are able to see. Once they were pushed back into the body, from that moment on, the limitation returned. But I have one question. If they never saw colors, doesn't matter, even if you took them out of the body, how did they know to tell blue, yellow, white? What do we learn from here? That once the soul came out of the body, the soul recognized color because of the previous life, because it was in another body. Once it's inside the body, it's limited completely because the body sets the rules. Once you get him out of the body, no more limitation. He can hear, he can see. It's interesting. There was a person, a chemist, that became blind from an explosion in his laboratory, and he had a clinical death a year after. When he came back to life, he described everything in colors. So she writes, how is it possible that those people knew colors? Dr. Raymond Moody says like this: I saw collapse of adults that usually are stable in their spirit, in their psychology. They started to cry and shake up as they were describing me the moments that they were dead. They started to cry with lots of feelings. It says the chance that those people were pretending, it's impossible. Because it's impossible that hundreds or thousands of people were all going to come and put up a show with such crying and describe what happened to them as they were dead. But not only that, those people come from different culture, different languages, different ages, male, females, Jews, non-Jews, all kinds of people from all over the world. Is it possible that there's such a conspiracy? 30 million people all over the world gather together and set up a plan to make up a lie, and it's impossible. If you have one or two people, then you say, yeah, there's two people who made up a plan to fool us. But once you have 30 million and there's no connection, no communication between them from all over the world, and they all come and describe the same story, we have to start realizing what's going on here, especially that even if it's a scam, even if they wanted to put a scam, they are able here to do things that nobody can do. For instance, if I want to trick everyone and pretend that I was dead and I came back to life, and I'm right here in a room, can I tell you what's going on the roof of the building? Even if I want, I can't. Can I tell you what happened in the entire hospital in the last 5 minutes? Impossible. There's no way to explain it. Let's move on. Conclusion. Dr. Ross, I know with no doubt that life continues after the physical death. Those who are willing to hear should listen. And those who are block their ears, they will be very surprised. No doubt there's life after death. Dr. Ring, the same conclusion. Let's move on. Final conclusion. There is inside the man a spiritual image that separates from this material body and the time of death and continue to exist. Let's see what the Gemara and the Zohar had to tell us more than 2,000 years ago. The Gemara says, Rav Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yoshua, became ill, and his spirit left his body. When he came back to life, his father asked him, what did you see in the upper world? He told him, Dad, everything is the opposite of what I thought. Those who are here, important, were the last over there. And those who nobody pays attention to, they were very important over there. So his father told him, no, this is the right way, what you saw over there. Here, it's an illusion. Over there, it's the world of the truth. And what else did you see? He asked him. So the son said, I heard there's an echo, an announcement. How lucky is every Jew that come to this world and he has knowledge in Torah. Ashrav sheba betalmudo beyado. Which means that he's knowledgeable in the book of God. He knows all the information that God gave us in Mount Sinai. This in the Zohar 2,000 years ago. In another place in the Zohar, this is what the Zohar writes. Rabbi, Kospadai, everybody thought he died. And then he came back to life. And he started to tell about the soul, his soul going up to the upper world. And the beginning of his trial. His trial already started. There's a person in Israel, approximately 15 years ago, he got stabbed in his heart. His name is Avi Khajani. He made a video and an audio tape about what happened to him. He was a criminal, and somebody waited for him in the stairs, and when he entered the building, he came behind and from the side and stabbed him with a big knife into his heart 3 times. They took him to the hospital. There was no chance for him to live because the heart was ripped to 3 different pieces. As in Bellinson Hospital, they were trying to save his life, and believe it or not, he was dead for 43 minutes. Complete dead. They covered him already. He's on the way to the refrigerator. And then once they were on taking him already to the refrigerator, he started to move his head. And the nurse over there got very nervous. They called up everyone. And his story was such a famous story that they sent the tape of his story to every hospital of the world to show the doctors that it's not over until it's really over. And then, why do I tell you about this guy? Because this guy is one of the only ones, most of them did not reach his level. He already had a trial. And he said that once he entered a place, he heard a huge echo, that there's a terrible voice, loud voice with echo, that called him Avraham, Avraham, Ham. He said, all my life, no one once even called me Avraham, because everybody knows the mentality in Israel. If your name is Avraham, everybody calls you over there Avi. Avi. And if not Avi, let's say you go and your teacher want to call you in your real name, they don't really know how to say Avraham. They say Avram. Avram. So there's nobody ever called him Avraham. It's the first time in his life that he heard his name Avraham, but in such a loud voice. And then he started to have questions, and he answered questions and answers until God gave him another chance to come back to life. Believe it or not, once he came back to life, he was trying to become religious for 3 months, and every day was less and less religious. 3 months later, he died again. And the second time he died, he got another chance. This is an unbelievable story. And this time, he left everything and he went to yeshiva. And today he's a famous Rav already, but his story in his chest. He has the scars from what happened to him. And this is a person, like right here. Right here, the Rabbi Kospadai started to describe his trial. That means they got already to the top station. There are few stops that the soul moves through until it gets to the actual trial. Let's continue to see interesting things here. And this is what the Torah tells us. When a soul exits this material world, it goes into the cave where Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and the mothers of the Jewish nation is buried, Me'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of the fathers in Hebron. This is the entrance to the upper world. The first 3 days after the death, the soul is flying above the body. Remember, this was written, all the things that I show you is 2,000 years and older. Way before the parapsychologists. Way before what they have in the last 25 years. And the soul is above the body. And thinking that maybe it will return into the body. All 3 days after the death, the soul is flying above the body. That's another source. 7 days after the death, 7 days, the soul is going back and forth between the house and the grave. That's interesting, because according to Jewish tradition, we sit Shiva for a person who died. Why Shiva? Why we have to sit 7 days? Now we understand why. Because the soul of the person who died will go back from the house where the people sit into the cemetery, back and forth for a period of 7 days. Which means he sees exactly who sits Shiva, who really crying, and who is counting when they can share the millions. They hear everything and they see everything. So that's interesting, because this information was given to us 3,300 years ago when God gave us the Torah. We continue in another place. This is what the Torah says. Rabbi Dosa says, God says in the Torah, Ki lo irani ha'adam v'chai, a human being cannot see me and stays alive. Comes Rabbi Dosa and says, Midrash in Midbar Rabbah, in their life they cannot see me, but they're all going to see me in the time of their death. So God says, when you're alive, you cannot see me. When you go into the next world, whether you want or not, you are forced to see me. Which means every one of us will have an opportunity, once we leave this world, to see who is that great God. There is nothing worse to the spirit than the separation from the body. And a person cannot die until he sees the light of God. Remember, I'm reading it to you from the Zohar, 2,000 years ago. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote it in Meron for 13 years that he was in a cave. And once he's desired to come close to that light, he's going out to accept the light of God. In a time when the time comes for a person to leave this world, the spirit goes out of the body and see the light of God. And from happiness to this light, it goes out of the body. If he's righteous, he gets the merit to stick to that light and be close to it. If he's wicked, the light slowly, slowly will disappear from him, and he's going to stay upset and mourn the separation from the body. This is from the Zohar. In a time of death, a person gets permission to see what he could not see in his life. The world to come has no limitation, no borders, no walls, no tent, no end, only huge light, that no light in this world will be even similar to the light of the next world. So this is all what was written in Judaism, like I told you, more than 2,000 years ago. Thank you, more than 2,000 years ago. And we are seeing what happened to the people in our generation, that they describe the same thing that the Torah described at that time. When a time a righteous person is dying, God is telling the righteous people, accept his face. All the righteous people say, you are welcome to this world. When a person is dead, he gets permission to see his relatives, his friends from the material world, and he recognizes them. And they look exactly like they look in this world. If he's righteous, they are very happy for him, and they welcome him and walk with him. The Gemara says in the time of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he passed away, he told his students around him, prepare a chair for the king of Judah, Chizkiyahu. He came to welcome me to the world to come. So what do we see here? Remember, we heard about those people who died 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Jews, non-Jews. They all describe things that actually the Torah told us many, many years ago. They said that they saw their relatives. The Torah said that when a person dies, he sees some of his relatives. Who could have known such information 2,000 or 3,000 years ago? Nobody was able to tell such information unless if he received it from the Creator of life. Comes the Torah and says like this: when a person died, he begins to see everything he did in this life. And he was told, this is what you did on that date. Do you confirm it? And he says, of course, yes. And another place it says, once a person left the world, God comes to him and says, I want you to sign on everything you did in this life. Now when you died, for the way you live, and you have to sign and report that everything is correct. And he signs. You should always remember, what above you, there's an eye that watch over you, and an ear that listens to everything you say. And everything you do is registered in the book of God. So this is information that we had in our Torah. One more thing before we go into the scientific world. Everything that is told in front of a dead body, right, in the funeral, he hears until the body is covered with the sand. So that means as long as they take the body into the cemetery, in the car, when they take it, they carry it all the way to the hole, to the pit. And all that period of time when the children is crying and everybody else is crying, he sees and hears everything. Once they take the body inside, still, as long as they didn't cover it, he hears the Kaddish and everything outside. Once they cover the body with the sand, his ability to hear is now much more limited, but he's still here. Until the worms finish to eat all the skin and the flesh, he is still able to hear and see things above his grave. Once the worms eat the body completely, then he cannot see, he cannot communicate with this world completely. Amar lo Rav le Rav Shmuel. Rav say in the yeshiva when he was learning about 1800 years ago to his friend in the yeshiva, his name was Shmuel. And he told him, when I die, I'm counting on you to bring all the students from this yeshiva in this town to my funeral and said a great eulogy for me, because I'm going to be above you and listen to everything you're going to say. This is information in a Gemara. Remember, this is divine information for those who don't understand, because remember, everything we know about life after death came for the last 25 years. 25 years ago, if you say there's life after death, people would look at you as a weirdo. What is this guy dreaming? Today, it's scientifically it's been proven. The Rambam writes, the Torah told us not to communicate with the dead people. How can you communicate with the dead people? By all kinds of tricks. How do you do it? Pay attention. There's a way to communicate with the dead people by starving, fasting, going to sleep in a cemetery on the graves until you get the spirit of impurity. And this is what the Rambam writes. Everything a Jew does to communicate with the dead people, to receive the information from them, it's a terrible sin against God and His Torah. Everything we are going to show you in the next few minutes was done by non-Jews. We are taking advantage on their discoveries to prove that our Torah is divine and not human. But we absolutely are not allowed to communicate with the dead, even though it's very easy today to do it, but we are not allowed. Someone who does all kinds of forms of communication with the dead people, the punishment in the Torah is to die very young. And plus, there's all kinds of tragedies in his life. I once met a guy that used to do it in his home, and he said that every day he used to come home, and the wallpaper on his wall was all scratched with lines. Nobody lived there, it was alone. He said because we used to do those things in the house, there were many, many lines on the wall, things from doing it. And all kinds of terrible things used to happen to him until finally he realized that he's playing with his life. There is one famous seance in Israel that people communicated with the soul of the Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben-Gurion, and in the middle of the seance, one person fell and died. In the middle of the seance. It's a famous case. Actually, before he died, he ran into the bathroom because he started to realize that something terrible is about to happen. And when he went into the bathroom, he saw this, inside the water of the bathroom, he saw the face of Ben-Gurion, and he fell and died. So that's a famous seance. There's many, many famous seances. One of them, they communicate with Yitzhak Rabin, asking about the murder. Communicated with Holocaust survivor, asking him if the terrible Nazi Ivan Demaniuk is really the real one, because they had a doubt if it's him or not. All kinds of famous seances that took place, but definitely it's not recommended for us to do those things because it's against the Torah. Let's continue. What is it really a medium? How can we communicate with the dead people by using a middleman, like a broker? Medium, it's a person that has extra ability more than the average people, which means he can go into a trance, and while he's half fainted, he is able to tell us what the deceased people are telling us. And of course, it's very easy to check if he's pretending or it's real, because the information that we're going to receive from our grandfather sometimes is very confidential. We are the only one who knows what our grandfather told us 5-10 years ago, before he died, right, in a hospital. And if we're going to hear it through this woman, that our grandfather is telling us, remember what I told you then and then, I want you to do it, or I don't want you to do it, then we know it's real, because this woman doesn't know about that conversation, right? So let's see. Before us, we're going to see some of the greatest communication that were done through Mrs. Leonora Pfeiffer and Mrs. Eileen Gart, two famous mediums that through them people were able to communicate with people who died. Mrs. Pfeiffer from Boston, she was very, very famous in the spiritual world, because in her seance, communication with the dead, her customer were able to call all their relatives in a period of 40 years. She was checked by 7 different teams to make sure she's reliable and she's legit. And they did all kinds of experiments with her. And they all came to the conclusion that she is able to communicate with dead people and pass reliable information. I'm skipping some of the things because I want to be able to get to the interesting parts close to the end. In 1887, Dr. Richard Hodgson, which was investigating all kinds of crooks, spiritual crooks, he came to the United States and followed up for 18 years Mrs. Pfeiffer to make sure her background, how she gets the information, and his final conclusion was that she's 100% legit. And this is one of the seances that she made. She tells one person, I'm speaking to your friend from childhood. She says his name. He asks if you remember that you went to school, you used to jump like frogs and laugh. He said that he was jumping much better than you. He says that he was suffering before he died, but you were not there for him. Then I'm skipping some of the things. In some of the mediums, there's all kinds of ways to communicate with the dead. For instance, one is while she's half losing her conscious, she's describing a person that is above her, passing her information. And they write it down or record it, and later, they compare what she just said to what really took place. But there's another way to do it. One other way to do it is the person who is fainted is holding a pen like this. Not like this, like this. He's holding a pen while he's half asleep. And after a few minutes that they cause the spirit of people, the pen begins to move and write on a piece of paper. But remember, it's not regular writing. She's holding the pen, she's sleeping, and the pen begins to move and write something on a piece of paper. In one of the seances, guess what happened? In the middle of the seance, there were the souls of the most famous musicians, classical musicians, came and started to write their best, the most famous music that they wrote, such as Beethoven, Chopin, Debussy, Brahms, Bach. All the most famous classical music started to write the most famous music that they wrote in their life. And this woman had no knowledge about music. She didn't know how to write music. So obviously when she opened up her eyes, she saw she just wrote Beethoven, and she didn't know. But they came, their spirits came, and passed some of their information. A woman named Emma Conti, Italian. Emma Conti, she had spiritual power. She's receiving information from the spirit of a woman named Emily Dickinson. She won 46 awards for songs that she wrote, even though she never even went to high school. She doesn't know anything. She's an ignorant. But she writes music, and she said there's a woman, Emily Dickinson, which was a famous songwriter. She passed her the information, and she writes, and every time she writes a song, she wins an award. Why? There's a dead person passing her information. Let's talk a little bit about reincarnation. The student of the Ari Kadosh, which I mentioned him before, Rabbi Chaim Vital, writes in his book like this. There's few times I was walking with my rabbi in the field, and he told me, you see this rock? There's a righteous person that lived in this world, and he's been reincarnated in this rock for one sin that he made. And he's pointing at the rock, and he says his name. And they used to go and say, you see this tree? That person is being reincarnated in that tree. And after he was telling me the story, I went to the hometown of that person to investigate if there was a person like this, and the way he described him, if he's real or not, and always he knew what he's talking about. The Ari Kadosh is the famous Ari 500 years ago. Like I said, all the Kabbalah we know is thanks to him. He was a special soul. But let's see a little bit more about reincarnation. Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh from Modena in Italy, in Venice, He did not believe in reincarnation until something that happened close to the end of his life. His neighbor gave birth to a boy. A month after his delivery, the boy became very ill. 6 months after his death, he was about to die. The neighbor called up the Rav and told him, Rabbi, come say some Tehillim. My son, my baby is dying. When he came to the room, he saw the baby has few moments to live. He started to read few chapters of Tehillim. The 6-month-old baby opened up his eyes and said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and died right away. 6 months old. You may say that this is a Jewish story, but there are many, many stories like this among the Goyim as well. In Portugal, one baby younger than a year old screamed one day the name of the king, Viva King Juan something, and died. And a few months later, this person became the king of Portugal. This baby came, he announced the name of the king, and he died. Now, when we open up the book of the Ari Kadosh about reincarnation, we find something very interesting. We all know Samson, right? Samson and Delilah. Samson, as you know, he had a wife, Delilah, Philistine, non-Jew, and his death was terrible. He died with all the Philistines together in a stadium. But Samson, the Arizal told us a secret about him. In the chapter that describes Samson, there's a word Badan, Bet, Daled, Nun. If you play with the letters, it's giving you the word Nadav. Who is Nadav? The son of Aaron. Aaron is the first Kohen, the brother of Moshe. He had 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, and they died. We read about them in Yom Kippur in a shul. And they died when they entered to serve Hashem with no permission. When they died single. They never got married. The reason they didn't get married, Nadav, because he thought that the Jewish ladies are not good enough for him. He described them not good enough for him, and he died single. What happened to him? God reincarnated him in a new life. What he became in his new life? Samson. What was his end? Measure for measure. All the punishments of God are always a measure for measure. What you did, that's what you eat. You cooked what you're going to eat. For instance, when in his previous life he did not evaluate enough Jewish ladies, in his next life he's dead weight by a non-Jewish woman. Measure for measure. His life, he suffered from all these foreign Philistines, measure for his previous life. And he say, and Nadav, one of the reasons he died, the Torah described, because he went to serve Hashem when he was drunk from a wine. And you know the story of Samson. Samson became a monk. And a monk means he does not cut his hair, and he cannot drink wine. That's what the Torah say. Measure for measure. In your previous life, you died because you were drunk when you came to serve God in the altar over there. Now in his next life, he does not touch wine. To correct his sins from his previous life. This is what the Ari writes. Now, Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychiatrist and parapsychologist from Virginia University, had 30 years of research from the 60s until today, and checked 600 cases of reincarnation all over the world. And in his he checked kids that are 2.5 years old to 4 years old. Why? Because kids cannot play tricks and they cannot fool you because they're innocent. And he started to investigate them, and he found many, many cases that children, flood of evidence, that children, a lot of them remember their previous life. I'm going to show you 1 or 2 movies about children that describe their previous life in details. From A to Z, you're going to see it in front of your eyes with a little patience. One of the stories, the case of Indika Ganreta from Sri Lanka, was born in 1962. Dr. Stevenson followed on his story and published his conclusion in 1974. Indika, the boy, started to talk when he was 2 years old. A year later, 3 years old, he started to describe himself as a very, very wealthy resident of the city Matara, that is on the southern beach of Sri Lanka. He said that he has a big mansion, a Mercedes car, he has elephants in his backyard, and a servant that his name is Parmazada, that used to be his private chauffeur, driver. The father of Indika, Gonreta, started to listen to the story of his 3 years old son, and he went to the city of Matara to check if there was really a person like this that fit the description of his son. And obviously he found that mention over there. He passed the story to Dr. Stevenson. Dr. Stevenson continued the investigation. He went to India and to Sri Lanka, and he confirmed large portion of the story of that kid. And he was a businessman that's selling wood. His name was Verizinga. He owned elephants, and he died in 1960. That means when he died in 1960, he was born in 1962 again. 2 years. He was in heaven, up there, and then he came back in another body. But the difference between him and us, that we were here also in another body, but we don't remember. Every rule has an exception to the rule. For every few million people, you have 1 or 2 that remember clearly their previous life. And every question you're going to ask them, they'll tell you exactly what took place in their life when they used to live in a different country. We're going to see some of these cases. Shanti was born in Delhi in India in 1926. When she was 3 years old, she started to tell her parents about what's taking place in the city of Motera. She said that my husband, 3 years old, my husband Kaider Nat, and I died when I gave birth to my son. 10 days after my son was born, I died, she said, 3 years old. In the beginning, her parents ignored her stories. But when she became 9 years old, she started to speak constantly about her previous life with exact details. The parents started to investigate. They sent a messenger to the city of Motera, and they found that her husband that she described, Kaider Nat, is still alive. They wrote him a letter. They say, we have a little girl that hallucinating, and she's speaking about you, that you used to be her husband. He was very impressed by the story, and he decided to surprise her. One day he showed up to Delhi, knocked on the door. The parents and Shanti did not know he's coming. As they opened the door, the girl recognized him right away. Kaider, how are you? And her husband started to investigate her and ask her personal question that his wife knew. She answered all the questions correctly. All the food that she used to make for him, his favorite food, and many, many other things. Why did you get remarried? The 9 years old asked him. Didn't we make an agreement that after I die you will never get remarried again? She says, she's right. I made an agreement with her. And after she gave birth to my son, she died, and I got remarried. So they brought 3 respectable people, you know, from the newspaper, a lawyer, and then businessmen, to follow her up and take her to the city of Motera and check the way she behaves over there. When they got to the train station, remember, this is 1926 we're talking, right? No cars, no airplanes yet. So when they got to the train station of Motera, they tried to trick her in all kinds of tricks. As soon as she got to the train station, she recognized in the crowd a person which was her brother-in-law in her previous life. His name was Gita. She pointed at him inside all the crowds. Then they rented a carriage, and she showed the driver how to get to her house from her previous life. Make a right, make a left. She recognized the house, even though the house was completely renovated and was painted in a different color. She recognized her father-in-law from her previous life. When she entered the house, she recognized all the house, the furniture even. Then she came to one room. Before she opened the door, she was able to tell what's inside that room. In a corner of one of the rooms, she stopped. and she's saying, this corner, I hide money under the ground. Please dig over here. They started to dig, and when they finished digging, the money was not there. She said, what's going on? I know I hid money here. The embarrassed husband was standing in the corner, admitting that he needed the money, and he took the money from that corner. So he confirmed that really there was money over there. This is a girl. In Israel, we have Arabs that are called Druze. You heard about the Druze? Yeah. They're loyal to Israel, and they serve even in the army. And by the Druze is very, very popular stories of previous life, for whatever reason. One of them, his name is Badr, a Druze soldier from Osfia. Osfia is in Israel. He was about to throw granite in the middle of training in the army, and his hand froze. He remembered that once already he died from this granite. He started to get scared. He could not throw it, and he could not explain why. He said, until age 10, I remember my death. Then I started to forget, but that moment when I joined the army, it all came back to me. I did not die as a soldier. I died as a shepherd. I was standing in one of the mountains where the Israeli army used to train. I was 18 years old, about to join the army in my previous life, and I found a granite on the floor. I opened it up, and it exploded in my face and killed me. In August 14, 1958, I died from that bomb. And then he was reborn in the next village by the name Badr. When he was 33 in his new life, he was working in Haifa. He served in the Israeli reserve, and he's telling his life story. I have to continue. Vivian Silvano was born in Sao Paulo in 1963 and speaking Portuguese. Then one day she started to talk Italian. When she was 2 years old, she started to make all kinds of names of people. And she was saying it in the right accent, Italian accent. They started to check her story, and they found out that she remembered her previous life. I'm moving on to the next chapter, which is regression. What's regression? Regression is very simple. You come to a doctor's appointment, a parapsychologist, and he's able to hypnotize you. How do they hypnotize you? They tell you, please look at the point right there on the wall for 15 minutes. Do not think about anything. Just focus on that point. And for 15 minutes, a person is staring at that point, and then he begins to fall asleep. This is a situation that you're half awake, half asleep. It's called hypnosis. They hypnotize you. Once you're in that situation of hypnosis, this doctor is able to return you to previous time in your life. And this is the way it's been done. There's many videos about it in many libraries. I'm sure you can get some of it in the internet. It's well known. Let's go to 1975. August 10, 2 o'clock. Can you tell me where are you? This person now is going back 30 years, 35 years. Yes. I'm standing in Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, trying to sell my Persian rugs to someone there. Then they said, okay, let's go to 1965. I'm waiting for my bar mitzvah. The rabbi is coming to teach me how to read in the Torah. Let's go to 1955. He's 3 years old. What happened? He falls on the floor and begins to crawl like a baby. Remember, he could be 7 years old. Then he makes noise like a baby, 7 years old, crawling on the floor, and you hear like a baby's on the floor. Then they say, let's go to 1950. 1950 is 10 years before he was born. Sometimes there is complete silence. You talk to him, no answer. Why? He wasn't in a body. He was in a spiritual world waiting for another reincarnation. Then they go, let's go to 1930. Then guess what? He begins to talk in a different language. Now he's speaking Russian. Until now he was speaking Persian. Now he speaks Russian. Where are you? In Moscow. What's your name? Alex. It's a different person. It's the same soul and a different body. Described 1930 in Moscow now. What is he doing? In some of those regressions, in the middle of the regression, there was one girl, one woman, that describing her previous life in Auschwitz. And she's waiting in a line, and the Nazis are shooting one by one. And she described it live, like in any second she's going to get a bullet in her head, speaking in Yiddish. Live from 1943 or 1947, mamash live, original from that time. Some of the regression, they were able to return people to the previous reincarnation that was sometimes was even 1,000 years ago. One of the regression, they were able to get a goy that describing that is a carpenter of the king of Egypt, Pharaoh. This is almost 4,000 years ago. He is speaking in ancient Egyptian. Some languages that they speak in the middle of the regression, nobody in the world were able to know which language is that. They took it to all the world experts to languages, and they did not recognize the language they were talking, because there's nobody aware of this language anymore. That's how old that language is. We're going to see some of the cases here. In 1973, a famous doctor in Philadelphia with his wife was regretting his wife after he hypnotized her. She started to speak like a man and ancient Swedish, very old language. She started to describe herself. She's a woman. She's a woman right now in her life. But she described herself as a farmer from Sweden 300 years ago in a village named Enshin. She described the village, the market, and she describing very primitive tools that she used to work in a field 300 years ago. I have all the sources. If you want to copy it, you can go and check later on. Okay? Then, in one of the sessions hypnotizing a person, Dr. William McDougall, a psychologist from Harvard University, in the beginning of the 20th century, he was not interested to find out anything about reincarnations. He wanted to do hypnosis, to hypnotize someone for a different reason. But in the middle of the test, there's a person that started to say that he's a carpenter, and he has to make on a board an image that was made for the grave of Pharaoh. And he has to make an eagle, and he described with his hand how the eagle would look, and with a white crown. And McDougall was registering all the information. 9 months later, Sir Petrie, a British archaeologist that was working with an Egyptian company, found out in his digging, he found out a grave of a king. Nobody knew which king from the time of the pharaohs, but they didn't know which one. And when they saw on the grave the images, it was exactly the eagle and the picture that this carpenter was describing, that he made it. So they put it together, they crossed the information. Maury Bernstein, a parapsychologist from Colorado, published in 1956 his sensational book, Following Brady Murphy. The book described Ruth Simmons, that remember a previous life of Brady Murphy in Ireland in the 9th century. It's like 1,200 years ago almost. And in few times of regression, she remembers relatives and historical places. And she speaks in very old Irish accent. And she described the life of Murphy in Ireland. Then later they investigated if there was a person like this. It was published in Life magazine, in an American magazine. Professor from Geneva was hypnotizing a girl, 5 years old, and while he was trying to cure her from her problem, she started to describe her previous life as she's in a palace with beautiful flowers. She said, I'm 23 years old. And she said, what's your name? Kanara. Where is it? In India. Are you married? I'm one of the wives of Prince Sibroka. Who is Sibroka? The king that is in charge of the kingdom of Kanara. At that time, she's speaking Indian, which she never in her life knew one word in Indian. But right now, she described her life from that time. Let's continue. I'm going to skip some. Dr. Weir Mitchell, a doctor from Philadelphia, reported that one time at night he woke up, somebody rang the bell. He opened up the door, pay attention carefully to this story, and he saw a little girl wearing some clothes, very sad, asking him, "Sir, my mother is very sick. Can you come and try to cure her?" It was very cold night, snow, heavy snow, winds. The doctor was very tired, and he almost told her that he cannot do anything for her. But then he had mercy on her and the way she talked, and he got dressed and he followed that girl to a house where the mother lives. When he entered the house, he treated the mother and saved her life. And then he told the mother, "You're lucky that you have such a clever girl, that she knew how to come to my house in such a storm and call me to come to help you out. She basically saved your life." The woman said, "I don't understand. I don't have a girl. My daughter died a month ago." She started to cry. And he said, "Here, you can see her clothes in that drawer." He opened up the drawer, and the doctor was shocked. The clothes that the girl that came to his house was wearing was right here in the drawer. She was dead already for a month. Her spirit came to the doctor and spoke to him to come and save the mother. Professor James Hislop, in 1911, described Rosa Stone from Portland. She started to say that her deceased son is visiting her house. In 1907, he was an officer in the army in Annapolis, and then he committed suicide after he had a fight with his friends. And the spirit started to come and tell her, "I did not commit suicide. They murdered me. I did not kill myself. They murdered me." And they checked the story and they found out that it's correct. I want to move on. I want to show some spiritual pictures. But before I show the spiritual picture, which is shocking, you have to get ready for it. I have to explain what does it mean, spiritual picture. Maybe have a drink. What does it mean, spiritual picture? When God created us, He made our eyes work in certain frequency. Based on the frequency of the eye, we get permission to see what God wanted us to see. But there are many spiritual things around us what we cannot see. When we open the Zohar, the source of Kabbalah, we see that the Zohar says that if the eye of a person will have permission 1 second to see all the demons, all the angels, all the souls that are flying in a space around us all the time, we would become mentally ill immediately. God, with His mercy, didn't want us to see all the spiritual things around us, and He made our eyes able to see only what He wanted us to see for our test in life. But obviously, He didn't want us to see the angels. But we have some stories in the Torah that Bilam, the prophet of the Goyim, was riding his donkey, and the donkey started to get nervous and running from one side to the other. And then the donkey, the Torah says that the donkey saw the angel. The angel is pushing the donkey away. Animals, their eyes work in different frequency. Sometimes if you have a dog or a cat in a house and the house is very quiet, out of nowhere, they jump, they get very nervous and they start to cry or to bark, and they go from one side to the room to the other, and they stand in a corner, and you're wondering, what happened? It's so silent here. The reason is because they saw a demon that you cannot see. If you would see what they see, believe me, you jump from the window. But since you cannot see, because God didn't want you to see, that's why you don't see. But that doesn't mean it does not exist. However, with today's technology, pay attention, we're almost done. With today's technology, when you take pictures, the lens work in different frequency. And what the lens can see, your eyes cannot see. So that means if you want to take a picture of your father, you only see your father in front of you. But there are other images in the air. So when the camera will take a picture, sometimes you'll be surprised when you develop the pictures, there are other faces in a picture. There are some legitimate pictures that were checked by laboratories that they're all real. It's not Photoshop or anything like that. And people who took pictures, let's see what the camera detected. A picture, 1992 in Auschwitz. Somebody went to Auschwitz, you know, it's museum today. There's a line of bathrooms over there. And when they took a picture of the bathroom, when they developed the picture, if you can see right here, there's an image of a boy or a girl. You see a face? This is the eyes, this is the nose, this is the mouth, right here. The camera was able to see it, but when he took the picture, obviously there was nothing there. Let's see some of the pictures. A captain that died, when his friends took pictures a few days after, he did not want to miss the event. So when they developed the picture, right between those two individuals, here and there, pay attention. Do you see another face behind his head? Right there? It's right there. He came to the picture, and when they developed the picture, they saw the friend that just died a few days ago. When he went by mistake into the propeller of an airplane that was started, it hit his head and killed him. Few days later, when they took a picture, he did not miss the picture. Let's see some of the other things. November 1995 in the United States, a building went on fire. Tony Horhill, the photographer that came to take pictures of the fire, when he developed the picture, he saw a little image looking, staring. They recognized her as a spirit of a girl that in 1977, 18 years before the fire, she already made some of the buildings in the area goes on fire, and she died. And she's right here. You see, he took pictures of the fire. Inside the fire, you can see the girl that the neighbors from the area was recognized as a girl that used to live in that neighborhood. This is a picture, regular family picture. Somebody took a picture of a father with two of his children, and you see inside the picture there is somebody here. You see? You see the face here of another boy? That's larger, right there. Nobody knows who this boy is. Then as a picture of a family from the 19th century. There's a granddaughter, 6 years old, that died 2 months before the picture was taken. 2 months. Once the family took the picture, you can see right there by the side of the house, by the siding, there's a little image. This is larger right here, you see? You see right here? There's actually two. There's one here and one here. See right here? There's a face of this girl that belongs to this family that died 2 months before the picture took place. Here is another picture. Tracy, that was born on June 13, 1975, Friday the 13th. And this is a picture that was taken in 1979. And as you can see the picture, there are spiritual images above her, as you can see, that were not there when they took the picture. There is another picture right here, and there is another woman. You see in the background? They took a picture of this girl on May 5th, 2001 with digital camera. And when they took, there was only the mother that took a picture of her girl. But inside the picture, they saw a face of another woman. I'll call, I'll find out. Yeah, this woman was sure she's alone in her house. When someone took her picture, there's a man standing in the background. You see right here? You cannot see really the face, but there's somebody else inside the house. Here is another picture, and there is a little girl sitting right there on the table. You see? That she wasn't there at the time of the pictures. This picture, the next picture, was taking place in a huge forest in 1985. And that forest, they executed many, many witches. Because it was against the law to be a witch. Today, Baruch Hashem, there's plenty of witches, but it's legal ones. But over there, in that I knew the man would smile. But anyway, can you recognize in the picture the fire that burned all those witches? I want you to pay attention to the picture and tell me if you see something over there. That was only a joke. Some pictures that were taking place in a cemetery. Look, somebody took a picture in a cemetery and pay attention to what they saw in the air. You see? A face, a huge face, inside. Here is some other spiritual picture. Somebody took a picture and guess what they saw in the air? Nobody knows. You see that? Then, there's another picture in a cemetery. Look what happened in the air. The camera was detecting something that nobody saw when they took the picture. You see, that guy ate chulent and his stomach hurts. And they wanted to take a picture to remember what happened. And look what they found in the background. Every word is too much. Here, another picture. Somebody else came to the... Come on. Maybe the girls are screaming. What? You're getting nervous? Oh, wait a minute. Pay attention now. You remember the story, 3 men and a girl and a baby?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the actor. His name is Ted Danson. Right. Okay, so you know who I'm talking about. While they were shooting the movie, they took some of the pictures in a house. That's when they filmed the movie. When they came to the studio to edit the movie, they were shocked. They saw that while they were filming a part from the movie, there's a boy standing in the background. The director of the movie says, anybody knows who's this boy? How did he get into the apartment? And they started to ask around and said, no, he wasn't there when we filmed. I know what I filmed, he wasn't there. They called the owner of the house, and guess what they found? This boy was a son that used to live in that apartment, and he committed suicide with the gun of his father. And his spirits are still in that house. And while the camera was shooting the film, the camera saw what the eye of the photographer could not see. Here is a picture that was taken by a builder. He came to renovate a school, and he was taking pictures, and he saw a girl. Pay attention, no feet. Now remember, he couldn't see anything. He was just taking pictures. When they developed the picture, the camera was able to detect certain things. This is a picture in Portugal, in a botanic garden. They took a picture, and pay attention, there's an image of somebody here. You see a picture that was taken in a car, nobody knows what's in the background.
No, this is too much. I can't.
It's a picture of a baby. There's an old woman planning to do something. Just before we're done, I want to show you the movie I promised. After the movie, 1 second. Shh. Here he goes.
There are thousands of stories like this, and Dr. Jim Tucker has gathered many of them.
We're investigating cases of very young children who spontaneously begin talking about previous lives. They usually begin between the ages of 2 and 3 and continue until the age of 5 or 6. We're looking at these cases to learn as much as possible about this phenomenon.
Jim Tucker is preparing a research trip to meet one of his subjects, a child claiming to remember a past life.
Yossi is a little boy in Colorado who has talked about being his grandfather. This began when he was 18 months old, and he's made a number of statements that seem quite specific. This one is a stronger case because the child has made some very specific statements that seems very unlikely he could have heard through normal means.
Gus Ortega's case is only one of many.
We've been studying these cases for the last 40 years. We've now collected over 2,700 cases like this. These cases have been found all over in Asia, in West Africa, they've been found in South America, in Europe, and the United States, pretty much wherever they've been looked for.
In a place not quite that far away, a hospital in America. An old man is dying. And a young boy believes he is this man reborn. Gus Ortega is a normal 6-year-old. Like most boys, he cherishes his time with his dad. But this relationship is different. Gus remembers that he played with his dad in a previous life. Only then, he was the father, and his dad was his son. This is the case that UVA scientist Jim Tucker is investigating.
Whenever I go to see a case, I go with a certain amount of skepticism. I never go with the assumption that this is reincarnation. And that's also the same approach that I have with the work as a whole. We're here because this is an interesting phenomenon, so we're trying to learn as much about it as possible.
Catch it! Oh, good job!
Grandpa Augie died in 1993. His son Ron found him lying on the floor in his home. A stroke. Grandpa Augie died 5 hours later. He was a shopkeeper. He sold everything people wanted to buy, and he loved his family. But he never met his grandson, Gus. Gus was born 1 year after Grandpa Augie's death. One day, when he was just a year and a half, Gus was alone in his room with his father.
Ron came out and told me that he had just finished changing Augie's diaper, and that he looked right up at him and said, "You know, Dad, when I was your age, I used to change your diaper."
I was flabbergasted, to be honest with you. I thought it was just kind of strange, especially the choice of words to say that phrase, "when I was your age," for this little 1.5-year-old toddler.
He started talking about Grandpa, and you know, just the little things he was saying that we knew he couldn't have known because he never met Grandpa. His grandfather died a year before he was born. So yeah, we were pretty puzzled about it.
Then one day, Ron Ortega brought a set of old photos home, and something even more remarkable occurred.
And I said, oh, look, here's, look at this old photograph. And he came up to it and he goes, oh, there's me. I mean, I was like, just totally astounded, you know. It just stopped me, you know, cold. I mean, because how would he know that?
Gus would make more statements like that over the course of the next years. He would recollect episodes of his grandfather's life that even Ron could hardly remember. And he was there. Gus knew more about his grandfather than he should have. Is this evidence of reincarnation? How else can these children remember another life? The case files of Dr. Jim Tucker will yield more clues.
That's it. Thank you very much. Questions, yeah.
Whoever in this room, please, I beg of you to read Shema Israel. First of all, not my question.
Yeah.
When you get back the person into hypnosis,
Yeah.
1,000 years back,
Right?
yes,
Yes?
his neshama is traveling 1,000 years back. So bringing back from that era to here, on the way, Chas v'shalom, other
You mix few different things together, but I want to tell you something. Why does the Torah does not allow us to call souls? The source is when King Saul was very nervous because we had a war with Amalek tomorrow, starting, and he didn't know what to do. And he called the spirit of prophet Samuel the prophet, which lived few years before. He called him, and this is what the Torah says. The Torah says that Samuel got very nervous when he called him back into this world. And he told him, why did you upset me to bring me back to this world? And the Torah explained that he was nervous that God took him out of heaven and brought him back to this life. He got very nervous. So by calling the dead people into this world, we may be disturbed their peace of mind or the peaceful place where they are. Or God forbid, in a not good place that they are. We have to know one thing. After a person died, there are few possibilities what can happen with him. One is he's being reincarnated for another test in another place, in another body, for another lifetime. That's one way. There's another possibility that he's not going to be reincarnated as a human being, he's going to be reincarnated as an animal, which means the spiritual soul is being pushed into a body of a dog, or a snake, or a bird, or a crow, or a cow, or anything like that. And until this animal will be killed or will be slaughtered, as he has to be all that period of time with a tremendous amount of suffering. Why? Because when you take the pure soul of a human being and glue it together with the nefesh, with the lower part of the animal, it's a terrible suffering for the soul. That's what the Kabbalah explained. And that's a punishment from his crimes against God in his previous life. Sometimes he's been reincarnated in fruits or vegetables, which means you picked up an orange, you have no idea that you just took a fruit that contains in it a soul of a person that died and was reincarnated in that orange. If you're going to make a bracha before you eat, you release the soul from that orange and it goes back to heaven and finished his correction. If not, he has to be reincarnated in another fruit until somebody will release him. That's why we say once a year near Pesach, we say Birkat HaIlanot. If you remember the text is that there are spiritual images inside the trees. Sometimes there is reincarnation in raw material, such as rocks, sand, and all kinds of raw materials around us. We have no idea to know that. And sometimes the person is not being reincarnated anymore. He, chas v'shalom, goes to a place called hell, Gehenom. And in hell there are 7 different sections which the Torah describes from A to Z, how they look and what really happened over there. And sometimes there's a place that is worse than hell. It's called Kaf HaKela. Kaf HaKela, the Torah says that the worst wicked people, they are being reincarnated in a place called Kaf HaKela. And sometimes the person is being reincarnated as a human being without a free choice, such as Down syndrome, autistic kids. I happened to speak to autistic kids about 8 years ago when they developed the way to talk to them through the computer. If you know, an autist cannot say one word, a sentence. He cannot put up together a sentence that makes sense. But in 1981, when they brought the first computer, it happened in New Zealand, in Australia, in England, in the same year. When they brought computers into schools of autistic kids, they were shocked that they're starting to punch sentences on a computer that makes a lot of sense. For instance, one of the autists told his teacher, "I love you." He typed on a computer, "I love you," because she did a lot for him. But all the years that he was there, she was trying to teach him few words, and with no success. His brain could not get the words. But the soul is a different story. Once they communicate, their fingers typing sentences that make sense, and they pass information. Today, there are famous books that were written in Hebrew, I don't know about English, but in Hebrew, about kids that were telling who they used to be in their previous life and why God reincarnated them in a limited body, such as an autist, and they are deaf and they're mute, and they all say the same thing, that because they used to speak a lot of Lashon Hara, bad things about people, instigate between people, make fights between people, say derogatory things about people, and enjoying listening to gossip and bad things that happen to other people. But other than these crimes, everything else was okay with them. They kept the laws of the Torah and everything. And other than that, they were righteous. So God had mercy on them. Instead of giving them a serious punishment, He reincarnated them with becoming deaf and mute, measure for measure, because they used to make crimes with their mouth and ears. Those parts got hurt. And they have very short life, if you know, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years maximum, and they die. And it's interesting, all the Down syndrome people have one face if you recognize it. They all look the same, which gives us a hint that God chose an image of somebody, we don't know really who, and they put them all in the same images, even though the body is created from different parents, different DNA, different genes. They all have the same face, which shows you that it's the hand of God, and it's all measure for measure. Now, sometimes a person goes chas v'shalom to hell, and then after he finishes a portion in hell, he's been reincarnated again. And the way that you left the world in your previous life, this is how you came back to the world. For instance, if in your previous life you were a stingy person, and you did not like to give donation and help the poor and the widows and the synagogues and the yeshiva, which many people have a lot of money, but they do not want to contribute anything for society other than themselves. So when they will be reborn, as they're already 1 year old, they come with the same personality, the same traits. Why? Because it's the same person. It's the same Yitzchak from his previous life. Now his parents call him Daniel, but it's the same person. So if he died stingy, he's born stingy again. But if in his previous life, for instance, he was generous, so as he's born, he's already generous. How do you know? You take 2 little brothers. One is 2 years old and the other one is 1 year old, right? And you give them a bag of pretzels. You give one and you give the other. One, you ask him one, he gives it. You ask from the other one, he begins to cry, he doesn't even want to give you one. You ask the third one, he gives you the whole bag. 3 different kids, each one has different amount of generosity. One is very generous, one is so-so, one is very stingy. How does those kids know about being generous or being stingy? They have no understanding about anything in life, because this is the way God reincarnated them, the same people. However, if we fail in all of our reincarnations, that's when God takes us to a place which is like a laundromat. It's like a dry clean. That's what called hell. Over there they purify the soul back to the original way when it was created, and remove all the spiritual sins that were made from all the sins we made in our lifetimes. It's very painful, but it pays, because in the end you achieve what you had to achieve in your free choice. Since you fell in this life to achieve it, you're going to do it in a hard way, but at least you're going to do it. There are other reincarnations that it's clearly revenge. No correction, nothing, such as Kafakela. Once it's end, after that the hell begins. So that means there are worse situations than go to hell. And in hell, there are 7 different places, one below the other. And the Zohar described the lowest part, which is the 7th section. It's called Tachtit Haaretz, the bottom of the earth. And over there, Chas v'Shalom, God forbid, we should never get there, God forbid. The Torah says that someone who entered that place can never come out of there for eternity. Never comes out of there. Eternity, you know what eternity means? No end. And this is people, pay attention. People who goes there, I hope you won't regret you came to the lecture. It's people, believe it or not, that committed one of the worst sins in the Torah, which a lot of Jewish guys don't know it. What is it? They wasting their seed not with relationship with a kosher wife, with girlfriends, with non-Jewish ladies, or just like that. Because when God gave the sperm to a person, the sperm is a tool to bring souls from the upper worlds into this world, because it has millions of sperms in one time. And because each one of them is a potential human being, once a person is wasting it, it's like Chas v'Shalom, like a murder, if he does it intentionally. And that's one of the worst sins which destroyed the life of a person, even in this life already. But people are not aware. If you want to know what it caused to your life, open Rambam and read. The Rambam explain what it does to the mental status of the brain and to the actual body. So therefore, people that do not know what they live for, they don't know what marriage is for, they know why they don't understand why they have children, they don't understand their obligation in life. They think we came to be another species in nature, like the monkeys, the chimpanzees. We came to sit on the beach, to enjoy the sun. They don't understand that we are here in a test, as the Torah says clearly that I'm testing you in every step you make, clearly in the Torah. Oh, and it describes the relationship between God and Abraham. What does it say? After what happened, God started to test Abraham. Test him in what? To see if he's going to listen to him or not. To see if he's going to mix his own opinion or he's going to listen to the orders. And what is the purpose of the test of life? Clear in the Torah. You don't need any explanation. You don't need any rabbi to tell you. You can do it on your own. Just open up Hebrew, English, Chumash, read Sefer Dvarim from the beginning to the end, 2 hours of your time, and you're going to know what life is all about for the first time maybe. And over there it says, I'm testing you like a father tests his son. And sometimes I punish you like a father punishes his son because he loves him. And why do I do all this to you? Because I'm testing you to see what's in your heart. Are you faithful to me or are you ungrateful to me? Are you listening to me or are you rebelling against me? Why am I doing it to you? To reward you in the end. To reward you in the end. Comes the oral Torah and say, what is this reward? We open up the Torah and this is what it says. That if you take, pay attention, it pays to hear this. If you take all the pleasure of this world, of 70 years, of all the people together, combine all the pleasure, multiply by 70 years, it will not reach the pleasure that the righteous Jews will receive when they go to the upper world in 1 hour. You understand what we're talking here about? For keeping Shabbat, for dress modestly for the ladies, for men to come, sit, learn Torah, or to pray, or to be connected to God, and to pay attention to all the rules, not to be a thief, not to say bad words, not to curse, to watch the eyes, not to watch all these dirty things on the TV, to become a righteous person. And everybody knows more or less what righteous means. If you don't know, come to me later, I'll explain you. But once you follow the rules of the Torah, your end, after you leave this world, that you will get endless spiritual pleasure. the Torah asks, what is this pleasure of the world to come? And the Torah says, the righteous people are sitting with a special crown to their heads and enjoying the sweetness and the greatness of God. What does it mean? I don't know. Chazal ask, our sages ask these questions. Why, when God wanted to tell us about the bad part of the world to come, hell, He described it to Moshe Rabbeinu in Mount Sinai from A to Z. There's a chapter of hell, describe the names of all the angels over there, the color of the fires, how many windows over there, how does the buildings look. It's unbelievable. Everything from A to Z. Which wicked people go to which section, for what sins, for how long. Everything is written. When it comes to heaven, to the good part, few sentences, that's it. So Chazal say, why? The answer is, because there's no way to imagine and understand the spiritual pleasure of God in this life. Because we are limited, we are under the influence of material here. We are in a materialistic body. Once we're gonna get from the material world, which is the 7th dimension, this world has 6 dimensions. South, north, east, west, up and down. Shabbat, the Sabbath, is the 7th day, which symbolize going out of the material world. That's why Hashem chose a period of 7, because 7 signifies spiritual thing. And Shabbat is not a day to sleep in bed because you work hard all day like some people think. Shabbat was given for the soul, for the communication with God. You understand? So the Shabbat symbolize going out of this temporary materialistic world. And over there, there's no way for us to understand, that greatness. But what do we need to understand? Isn't it God is faithful enough and reliable and honest that I should listen to His promise? And if He tells me that all the pleasure that we dream for this world combined together for all over the people together, multiply by 70 years, לא ישבו לקורת רוח של שעה אחת בעולם הבא. It will not be equal to 1 hour of pleasure of the righteous people in the world to come. What are we going to lose with our stupidity for stupid things that we like in this life, here and there 5 minutes? We are going to give up such a reward. We'll never forgive ourselves. All we have to do is start talking to God. Help me out. Like He says, say Shema Israel. I want to be close to you. Show me the way. Show me the direction. I'm tired of this phony world. Everyone with a smile, all these illusions. Show me how to get close to you. I want to really be righteous, but it's hard for me. I don't know. Look at my family. Look where I come from. They don't believe in anything. They're anti-religion. They hate religion. Help me out. There's a book. I recommended it. Eli, you got that book already? There's a book. It's called Garden of Emunah in English and in Hebrew. They soon gonna make in Persian if you want. Yeah. But it's called Garden Emunah. Garden of Emunah. It's a combination of a lot of chapters of Emunah means faith.
You wrote it?
I wish. I tell you, it's a combination of all the sources of faith in God. How to become closer to God. How to see the greatness of God in this life. How to be able to listen to Him without pain, without suffering. It's a very, very recommended book. Shariar, or Moshe, depend how you want, he can tell you that he already read that book. I recommended it to him. Does it give you strength in life or no? It's worth billions.
It makes a totally different perspective.
You can get it in Safra, in Main Street in Queens, $11.99, and you have new life. And you'll never finish to admire the power of the Garden of Emunah. Garden of Emunah. Thank you very much. Yes. Questions after. Good night. Thank you. No, you can ask me the questions.